Hey, Facebook Live. It has been a while since I have been with you, and I've been retooling quite a bit. You can see maybe a little bit of what I've been up to about, oh gosh, when was February? What is it, May? April? It's April now. I've been pretty busy launching the 7-day-a-week business podcast and basically closing out a event back in October with TEDx Harrisburg. That was an amazing opportunity and honor and privilege that I had, and I've been interviewing other people because there are a lot of coaches out there. There are a lot of people that have a lot to say about these branded talks like TED or Q or Aspen Ideas or Google Talks or you name it. These special format, invitation-only programs, but there are not too many that have actually, well, there are 100,000 alumni of TEDx, but I wanted to actually create an archive of resources for people to be able to use. I've got this really neat, I'm trying to put something on the clock here. Wait a minute. I'm trying to set up this little stop clock here. How much time do we have? No, I don't want to be on this until 1 p.m. Oh, this is hilarious. If you can't see what I'm doing, let's see if I can switch this. I can't switch this. I've got this ridiculous. I'm going to take the shot clock off. Okay. Very good. So, so just wanted to thank all of you for showing up and connecting. And I know it's been a little while, and it has been because I have retooled. So if actually, let me show you what I've been up to. Let's go over to BeTheTalk so you can see what are we up to today. I'm having a hard time because I've got all these windows covering up what I'm trying to do here. Okay. Who do we have today? Who went live today? I should really be more on top of this. A lot of this is automated, which is really, really great. Anthony Brown. So I interviewed a architect today. So we're up to 72 episodes. Let's go over to the list of episodes. That'll help a little bit more. I've been interviewing all kinds of people. It has been a blast. And so what I'm going to be doing tomorrow is a big experiment. It has, 72 interviews published. I have over 110 scheduled interviews, and I am doing tomorrow about 11 interviews, which is a personal record for sure. Now, one of those episodes is going to be and I'm very excited about this, with Dave Blanchard, who is the CEO of the Og Mandino Company. Some of you may ask me, hey, any relation to Ken Blanchard? I don't know. I mean, I have my suspicions. I should probably find that out ahead of time, talk to his assistant or something. I'm just going to let Dave stand on his own 2 feet because I read his book and it was really fantastic. It was really, really a life-changing book for me. And I'm trying to, here we go, back with all of you. So I wanted to take just a few minutes here today to give you a little bit of a context for tomorrow's interview. If you're able to join us live, and I hope that you can at 2:30 Eastern Time tomorrow afternoon, I really hope you can do that. It's going to be great. But the context is this, and maybe I shouldn't be telling people this, but I want to minimize the frustration tomorrow because what this is not going to be, it's not going to be your standard Facebook Live where you can, question and answer and comment. I welcome you to do that, but this is going to be a very tight interview, and what I'm going to be doing is broadcasting the interview future podcast portion with everyone on Facebook Live that wants to be involved. I think that's going to be an enormous value add. However, there is a potential that people may feel a little bit frustrated. Actually, it's a reality, so I'm just going to preempt it. You're going to want to be asking all these questions to Dave, and we're not going to have time for that. Maybe offline. However, Dave's interview is right in the middle of my 11 interviews that I have tomorrow, and so I didn't think this through before I kind of announced this. And actually, I'm thinking about doing more and more of my interviews on Zoom, which would allow me to Facebook Live, as opposed to Skype, which only allows you to Facebook Live with, I think, $1,000 software piece. And I'm frankly not going to jump in on that level when I can do it on Zoom so easily. So, I welcome your comments, I welcome your likes, I welcome all of that. We're just not going to be able to acknowledge that. And so this is going to be kind of a second screen, kind of a little bit of a secondary audience. But in exchange, I'm giving you early access to this interview that you don't have to wait a month or so, because at this point we're about a month out again. I started this interview. I got to give a big shout out to my buddy Lefford Fate, who was episode 001 on Be the Talk podcast. We talked about his TEDx talk, which is entitled Correcting Corrections, Why I Am in Prison. And as a hospital and prison administrator of a mental health department, I'm getting some of the details wrong, but he gave this talk, and it basically, we talk about this in the interview, how the state of South Carolina ended up amending and changing their laws for the better, not in a negative, hardcore way, not in an old school way, but in a humane way, okay, a humanitarian way, appropriate way. They were able to amend their laws, and so the man gets up, he gives a TEDx talk, he literally changes the world, his corner of the world in South Carolina, which is not a small place in the world at all. Gary, thank you so much. I'm going to get to that in a minute, but just to quickly clue everybody in, if you're not familiar with the Og Mandino Company, Og Mandino wrote a classic, a sales and connection classic of literature called The Greatest Salesman in the World. Dave Blanchard is now the CEO of that company. He's basically injecting new life into that classic. So, great question, Gary. I'm going to get to my review, because I read the book. I read his latest ebook, not The Greatest Salesman in the World. I read that like 20 years ago. But I read Dave's ebook, which you can also get as a physical book, and I'm going to share with you the Amazon review that I left, because it's a great book, and it really makes a unique contribution. I love books that clarify things like, and I'll just kind of let it out of the bag a little bit. If you've ever seen the movie The Secret from 10 or 15 years ago about the law of attraction and Think and Grow Rich and Napoleon Hill and all of these things, and I know Bob Proctor was pretty heavily featured in it, and I've got a lot of friends who are Bob Proctor fans. I admire his work myself, and the problem that happens whenever anything goes astronomically big is that to popularize something, a lot of times we have to simplify or oversimplify something. So millions and millions of us have this idea of the law of attraction, and we just hold our intention and just kind of do this, meditate. And the idea is for certain personality types that I may or may not identify with. Okay, some of us think that that's enough. Just I want a big house. I want a big house, and we don't get around to doing it because we have so much going on up here that we no longer can distinguish fact and reality from what's going on up here. And Dave's book just assassinates that thing, and it bifurcates it. It just does like a John Belushi 1970s Saturday Night Live samurai warrior right down to the middle. And what I really love about it is he does so without like poo-pooing the baby with the bathwater. Okay, he says in the book, visualization is a powerful gift. It is necessary to be an entrepreneur. It is necessary to be a human. It is necessary to have just a vision for your life and live with hope. And then he assassinates the whole thing about, it's not enough to just live with this happily ever after and focus, your energy and your emotional energy on it. And he actually goes through a bunny trail of emotions and chemicals. He scientifically breaks down what's going on in our brains when we're like, I want the big house and I want to, have 50 grand a year for the rest of my life that I don't have to work for. All of these things that some of us can fall into. What happens in our brains is it actually short circuits our brains and releases all of these natural chemical drugs into our brain, and then we basically get hung over with false hope, and really, it's powerful stuff. So, I'll get to that in a moment, but I wanted to first just set up a context. I'm going to share the interview with you live. I'm going to broadcast it with you. However, I'm not going to be able to acknowledge any comments in real time. And we're probably going to have to go on to the next interview, which will not be broadcasted live. I've got another, 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 after Dave. So I've got to really watch out that it doesn't like train wreck schedule wise all of my other stuff. But I just couldn't let this opportunity go without sharing it with you. So I'm really, really, really excited about it. Before I get to Dave's book, and I'll show you Dave's book right here, because it is called, here it is, Equanimity. That is the book that I am reviewing. Now, as part of my Amazon review, one of my suggestions for this book is that I think they may need to relaunch or rebrand or maybe even rename the book, because I wouldn't have realized that this, even though it looks fine, but it doesn't grab me. It didn't grab me. The only reason that I knew it was going to be powerful is I listened to another podcast interview with Dave Blanchard in which he goes into the whole chemical trail in our brains and, are we, using our power of visualization to legitimately figure out and anticipate the next obstacle, the next challenge, and then find ways around in our minds to circumvent that, to overcome it as we encounter it or before we encounter it. And in that way, we're able to use the power of visualization appropriately. We embrace grit. We embrace a growth mindset that Carol Dweck talks about in her book that so many people that I interview reference. And we can also, come up with that ultimate image, but don't go, of success and what we're aiming towards and maybe the car we want to have. But then what Dave warns against is going beyond that and just living in this fantasy life where we don't have to go to work anymore and things just kind of gravitate towards us automatically. That is a fantasy that never happens because, and certainly I know this because I've got so many friends, I've got so many people that I'm interviewing that are independently wealthy and they do have a sports car or a nice car. And they can attest to the fact that even though they're there, that life doesn't work that way for them, nor do they want life to ever work for them that way. They're going after the challenges. They're adding value to people. They're present. They're connecting. Okay? So that's what I love about this book of Dave's, but I'm going to share with you the review that I left because, and part of this is because I'm not going to have time to set all this up in the interview. I'm certainly not going to have the time to set up the context on Facebook Live. You're going to be kind of peering in and enjoying that. And I'm going to figure out some way to circle back offline with any comments or questions that you have. Just looking at this for a minute. I've got notes on this Facebook Live because I wanted to use it very wisely here. I'm going to switch gears at this point, and my friend Barbara Lay had a question for me about TED events, and has recently discovered that her first TEDx event is in Curacao, where she lives, which is a beautiful Caribbean island off the coast of South America. I believe it's off the coast of Venezuela, if I'm not mistaken. So it is, I believe, the third TEDx in Curacao. And she's just aware of it, and I let her know that it can be a really great place to meet other people in the room, to meet other movers and shakers, to meet other people that generally the tickets for any TEDx event can be easily $50, $75, $100. If you go to the actual TED events in New York City or around the world, those are much, much, much higher than that. So I have found that as opposed to other networking events, as good as they can be, if you're a roofer or a plumber or, a real estate agent or someone that has a more kind of a mainstream service or product that they provide, I have found that really to meet other people and really value add to other people, I have to go to other events where there's a much higher ticket price, and I find other people that are really valuable people to be able to connect with. That is kind of a secret that I didn't understand until I had mentors in my life that desensitized me to some of the prices of some of these events. And you know what? You have a higher intention, a higher value set, a higher price paid for an event, and you have a much higher experience in the room and much more deep friendships and working relationships can be forged. So she basically asked me, hey, Nathan, what are some good things? What are some tips for people in the room? I'm actually going to look up her question right now so I don't miss it. Any tips on how best to navigate? How do I switch this? Any tips to how best to navigate the speakers and attendees? Oh, wise one, she says. Now she's just pulling my leg about, oh, wise one. Barbara and I and my wife had the distinction of, I'll just say this. I haven't climbed a volcano on horseback with many people. But Barbara Lay is one of those people, and my wife is another one of those people, and I think there may have been one or two other people in our party that day. So Barbara and I go way back. So she says, tips on how to navigate. I just say, add value to people. I mean, Barbara, you know how it works. Just add value to people. That's basically the name of the game. Go there to serve, go there to add value, go there to be present. You know how to do all that stuff. Actually, you are usually lecturing me on all of those things, aka I think it was Guatemala hotel lobby with me and a bunch of other people, and that was a key week for my own awareness and chilling out and becoming a little bit more flexible and becoming the person that I am today. So it's all the stuff that you basically are always harping to me about. You do those things. And also I would highly recommend, go up there, shake the organizer's hand. If there's some kind of a VIP option, if there's some way to financially support or even underwrite as a sponsor, or just get some people together, sponsor a table, or turn on other people there to the sponsor, and just do whatever you can to make that city team feel supported, feel embraced, feel loved, feel appreciated. That's a big thing that will really pay off major dividends in the city. And Barbara, you can do that because you've been hosting Live to Lead down there in Curacao. I mean, you've hosted our mentor, John C. Maxwell, the world's #1 leadership expert. You didn't just beam him into the room like most people. You actually brought him, I think it was about 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, you actually brought him physically in the room, which is pretty darned epic, okay? Very not inexpensive thing to pull off, Barbara. So just, bring your team, bring your friends into that. That's another thing. I would bring in some of your friends over there. I don't know if you've introduced me to some of your friends, and I know them, and I would bring them into the room and sit with them and just work the room as a unit a little bit that way, just because there's such rich connections that can be found in these events. Okay, so that is my advice to you, Barbara. Now back to switch gears back to my review of Dave Blanchard's book, which is entitled, I think, there's a reason why they need to, I feel, relaunch the book, Equanimity. I forgot the name of the book, even though it's already changing my life. So let's go over there. I'm going to read the review and show you the review over here. So, and I've got to move Windows off of my little screen in order to read this review to you. Okay, here's my review. Okay, 5-star, definitely. And my title is Entrepreneurial Fantasy versus Reality, an empathy-driven roadmap to choose true success. Okay, and basically, I'm just going to elaborate here. I'm not going to read it because you can read it too. But it basically starts out with a kind of I'll call it, not his words at all, but I'm going to call it an entrepreneurial zombie apocalypse. And basically, there's a mountain that we're ready to climb, and you see these people in their cars, and it's like they're zombies in their car. And the reason is because they're just holding their intention, and they're dreaming, and they're believing about attracting their best life to them. And it's really weird because imagine going to a trailhead, parking your car, getting out of the car. You have a tour, you have a guidebook, you have a map. Okay, and that map is very important, but you look and everybody else in that parking lot is just basically, doing like some kind of trance in their car. Now, some of the cars have little kids in baby seats in the back seat, and instead of taking care of the kids, you've got these parents in the front seat just, doing their little law of attraction meditation thing. And so that's basically the opening scene. Now that's kind of an arresting little scene right there, okay? So I say here, and this is a summary, so I guess there's a giant spoiler warning throughout this thing, but I basically say we have, and this is based on his book, we have the power, yes, to dream, to attract, to visualize, and to create mentally in advance, but for so many of us, we use that power to fantasize about living a comfortable life and an easy life instead of visualizing the next step in our journey, the next challenge, the solutions for the next obstacle, and the intrinsic rewards of serving others and growing into our best self. And that, my friends, is really the message of the book. It is a really key distinction. And if you've ever just kind of flip-flopped a little bit about the law of attraction, about just some of the issues that come with visualization and believing and being a dreamer and being an entrepreneurial person and trying to go where the rubber meets the road. This book really takes the rubber where it meets the road, and it's great. So I'm going to continue here. This book cuts right to the heart of fantasy versus proactive visualization. Okay, two things: fantasy versus proactive visualization. Fantasy visualization on the one hand, and proactive visualization. And I like that he doesn't slam visualization. He said he doesn't do, the either or thing. He doesn't do a straw man. He doesn't say, stop doing visualization, just get the job done and, do 1,000 push-ups this morning and make it. He doesn't do that. He says visualization is a valuable tool. We have to use it in a more harmonious and balanced and refined way. So I say, and I continue on, this book has already, after I just knew by reading it yesterday, this book has literally changed my entrepreneurial trajectory as a business builder because it corrects my flaw, or the flaw, of The Secret and the Law of Attraction, and then I put the Law of Attraction / inaction, because that's usually where it stops, and that's why it fails so many times. It has corrected those laws and flaws by focusing us back on grit, growth mindset, and using the power of visualization as much to anticipate and overcome obstacles. It validates and honors this power of visualization more than in The Secret, the movie, the documentary, by bringing us back into a closer reality. The joy of achievement in the real world and applying visualization to actual challenges or anticipated challenges instead of a blind, happily ever after fantasy. Okay. Now, at this point, I got a couple, and you can read the review. I'll put a link there. And the book actually only has a handful of reviews. It deserves to have 50 or 100 or 1,000 reviews. It only has a small handful of reviews right now. Here are my constructive little critiquey reviewy things. The book is written as a fable and story style, like a Patrick Lencioni book. Personally, that's not usually my style, but I actually found it more engaging that it was kind of as a fable. However, it's kind of a little unique and a little strange because it's written in a second person narrative. So when the person is in the book is the tour guide or the trail guide or the hiker leader is interacting with us. It's actually he's interacting or she is interacting with us, not you or I. It's second person. So in a couple of places, many places actually in the book, you're reading this, and that's just not. I don't think that's not a style that I'm familiar with. So it seemed a little odd, but at other times it kind of sucked me in a little bit. But sometimes I was thinking, who's this other? Who's we? Okay, is it me and the person? But then there were times that they called the person by name. So I'm like, is it only one person? So why is it a we? That was where my brain was going. And I know there's some kind of literary way to sidestep that because I've never read another book that caused my mind to kind of be distracted a little bit in that way. So that's a little piece right there. Now, having said that, I usually really appreciate and prefer just give me the facts and give me the principles. This book didn't do that, and I think part of the reason is because The Greatest Salesman in the World, the Og Mandino classic, and Dave, again, is president of the Og Mandino company. So this book is kind of written on top of The Greatest Salesman in the World with the 10 scrolls about greeting every day with love in his heart and all of that. I think that made it work because I knew and I was trusting Dave to write a book that would refer back to The Greatest Salesman in the World, a book that I have read, but frankly, it never, like many books that are business classics, it didn't really stick with me, or I needed kind of another voice to help unpack and interpret that book a little bit more. So that was probably the reason why it worked. If it was just somebody's ideas and thrown out there, I would probably have disengaged at some point. So that's the one piece. The other piece is I listened to a podcast interview, and I'll even provide that link because it was an excellent interview, and I really want to kind of go into even deeper territory in this bifurcation between unproductive fantasy visualization and proactive growth-minded visualization, which also visualizes the goal, whether that's a new car or a house or a certain income or a certain feeling tone, but uses that as a placeholder instead of a way to go beyond and into happily ever after land. So we're going to hopefully go there in the interview tomorrow. So I mentioned here in the review, my suggestion is to rebrand the book in a more compelling way so that millions of other lifestyle entrepreneurs do not overlook the transformative power that comes when we use visualization to tackle the next challenge and obstacle and embrace grit and growth mindsets instead of fantasizing about living on a beach somewhere. And I think that's going to need to happen through a rebranding of the book, probably a retitling of the book. My opinion, I'm just one person out there, but this whole thing about true and false visualization and where it ends up and really the price to be paid, which is before, going broke, and all of that. Before that, you basically come to a place of recurring shame because you know something's not right and you know that you're trying and you're not giving up, but neither are you changing fundamental things in a way that will really give you the results that you need. So I really think that, and I'll get into this hopefully tomorrow in the interview, there's a real piece of before you make it, which we know never happens as an entrepreneur. You never make it as a business owner. There's always another mountain to tackle. But let's just say financial, independence or financial well-being. We could even say that, making it to financial well-being and financial, some would say, responsibility. A lot of people aren't making it because they're being sidetracked in false visualization, according to this book. And what is, these are my words, not the book's words or Dave's words, but I feel like there are times in this other podcast interview as well as in the book where it really describes the emotion of shame, which is doing, insanity. Albert Einstein said insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, this goes even deeper into that, and better yet, doesn't just leave us there. It tells us what we need to do, which are based on Og Mandino's principles. So it's time tested. The Og Mandino book about the greatest salesman in the world, 25 million copies. mega book. Mega star of a book. So anyway, that is that's a little bit of my 2 cents right there. And I think that's about it. Let's go and see if I have any comments here to go back through, because I'm using a different fancy third-party piece. Let's see. Bunch of people, likes, appreciate that. Commented on somebody else's live video. Let's thank all of you likers out there. But not too many comments. So come on, you guys. We got comments. Oh, whoops. I am broadcasting the recording of my live. This is a little bit trickier than I thought. Okay. All right, everybody. I hope I'm still broadcasting here. Okay. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Jill. Great interview on BeTheTalk as well. Jill Davis. Jeet, good to see you. Ivan, Mike, Gary, of course. Thank you for your comments. And Nathan, my gosh. And so that's about it. I am, as I always do, have no fear, because I'm going to upload this to Facebook, where you can access the replay at 1.5 or double speed, because this has gone on a little longer than I originally thought. How long have we been doing this? What happened to my... Well, I don't know where my little time clock went, but anyway, join me tomorrow, 2:30 p.m., BeTheTalk interview with Dave Blanchard, CEO of the Og Mandino Company. Please be aware, again, I'm bumpered on the front side and the back side, so we're going to do a 20-minute Facebook Live. I'm going to try to think of some way to loop back around offline with any comments, questions, but it's going to be basically a broadcasted interview for the podcast, and I want to open it up in real time to you. I have another, I think, 5 interviews before and 5 interviews after. It's going to be a marathon day. Check out BeTheTalk. If you haven't gone there yet, go to BeTheTalk.com, subscribe listen to what we're doing. And if you've ever wanted to give your first branded talk, for most people, that's going to be a TEDx talk, or maybe a Q talk, or maybe an Idea City talk, or something, in that format. I mean, other people are creating their own new formats and new branded talks. So it's really, really exciting. If that's you and you want to finally get on the stage and be able to broadcast your ideas we're sharing, then let me know who you are, because I've been thinking, after interviewing almost 100 people so far in the last couple of months, 7 days a week, 31 times a month, I've got some real data behind what I've been doing, and it's been wonderful. And so now I have the real wherewithal, not just from my own speaking experience closing out TEDx Harrisburg, as well as being someone that has been highly involved in the past in local other TEDx events. I've got a lot of experience, but now I've got 99 other people's experience, and I'm adding another 30 a month. That way. So if that's something that you have ever thought about doing, but you didn't know where to start, how do I give my first TEDx talk? Not so much where do I find a coach, or how do I hire a coach, or whatever. Not that stuff. I'm talking about getting accepted and applying like I had to apply to not 1 or 2 or 3 places, but I applied to bunch more places than that. And then when it all shook out, not only was I accepted, but they actually chose me to close the entire event out, which was just a huge honor. Actually put the fear of, even more the fear of God in me when I realized that I would be closing it out. And then when I realized who the other speakers would be, including one speaker who I had known of for the last 25 years, who has sold over 2 million books. I don't know why, I would think that would be the person to close it out. No, they chose me to close it out. I closed it out. I pretty much grand slammed it. I'm not going to be modest here. I worked hard on it, and I stepped up to the plate, and we were all pretty happy about it. So if that's you and you want to give your talk that changes the world, and you just don't know how to apply or how to get accepted or what to do, or maybe even protocol issues is a really big thing, because I've reviewed submissions and videos, and there's a protocol issue. And you want to make sure that you submit just like you were applying to college. It's not nearly like applying to college, but you need to have a good idea, and you need to be able to have some protocol to be looked on, as favorably as possible. So if you have questions about that and you're listening to this right now, just shoot it in the comments, and I'm going to start creating an archive of not just interviews, but actual, and not just bundles of data and content based on the interviews that I've done, but I want to match those. The only way that has any value is if you ask your questions, so that I can start synthesizing and customizing and solutionizing it according to the questions that are going to make the breakthrough for you and the people that you're influencing right now as a leader. So anyway, really long Facebook minutes, which really isn't all that long, but I haven't done any of these Facebook Lives for, I think, over 6 months. So I'll see you all tomorrow. Take care, everybody, and join us for an amazing interview with Dave Blanchard tomorrow, CEO of Og Mandino Company. Take care.